Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't intellectually done it myself. I've kicked it around.
Right. You know. Yeah. Right. Right. Oh, nice.
Right now. So we're gonna. Like if I instructor would not be fit.
Oh, wow.
She's back.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh, yeah. And with mom, right. Yeah. I think San Francisco. I'm like, okay, if you want to hate on to me, San Francisco. Well, it is cost.
Of the whole Exodus and then.
Yes, it's a it stays pretty steady because because we're landlocked, right? And so San Francisco can only grow so much, and even like for building affordable housing or any type of housing, it's infill housing. You can only do so much of that. So I think it's always like I live. So I'm like, the same with my mom. She was. So came up here. Yeah.
Welcome. My name is Nathan Howe, Department Head of Interior Architecture, Industrial Design, and Interior Design Programs in the College of Architecture, Planning, and Design at Kansas State University. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker and our featured ECDAL lecturer. It's actually kind of nice to be back here in the Union, the Forum. I remember as a student and faculty member, many an ECDAL lecturer being here. In fact, I watched Stephen Hall give a presentation here, Todd Williams and Billy Chen, among others. And so it's nice to be here while we're giving the Rainier Forum its needed maintenance. But please keep your eye on the swivel for the next lectures. We're hoping to get the Rainier Forum back online here soon. Speaking of that, February 16th at 4:30 will be our next Rainier Forum lecturer, ECDAL lecturer, Nader Tarani, world-renowned architect and educator. And then March 25th, also at 4:30, hopefully Rainier Forum, also will be Dan Snow, master craftsman and landscape architect. It is really fortunate to have this lecture series. It is to honor Oscar Ekdahl, graduate from architecture in 1933, who had a legacy in the profession and bringing art and architecture to the world. And his legacy is to bring to us this lecture series to also bring world-renowned architects, designers, and planners to Manhattan, Kansas, so that you all can hear their voices and then echo that through your careers, but also for those lecturers to see us and all the great things in the work that you do and take that back to their homes and spread the word. Kansas State is an amazing place, has amazing work, and you guys are also amazing. We are honored to welcome Verda Alexander. I was in San Francisco a few years back to visit O+A. She's the A of O+A. I was not able to meet her at that time. I met her there's so many great things about Verda that and you'll know why in a few minutes. Verda's work is in the dynamic intersection of design, climate action, social justice, and art. Across a career dedicated to expanding what design can or should be, Verda has challenged the heritage model of practice while advocating for meaningful, systematic change throughout the global economy. Passionate communicator and a thought leader, she writes and speaks widely about people's work and the urgent role designers play in addressing she also co-hosts the podcast Breaks and Dishes, fascinating name, which features provocative conversations with innovators and disruptors working to transform the profession. Verda is deeply engaged in both grassroots and industry-wide climate initiatives. She contributes to creative activism through XRSF Bay Area's Art Working Group, serves as a co-chair of the Climate Reality Project's Business Engagement Team, and most recently joined the Diversity and Design Collaborative as co-chair of the Awareness and Activation Team, advancing equity and representation across the design disciplines. Through her leadership, advocacy, and creative practice, Verda continues to influence how designers think, collaborate, and act, ensuring that design remains a powerful force for environmental stewardship and social transformation. And in this world where disruption doesn't always mean positive change, it will be very interesting and good for us to hear how we can make a difference with disruption. So here, please help me welcome Verda Alexander for today's lecture, Break the Practice While Design These Disruptors Now. Help me welcome Verda.
All right, I've got my work cut out for me, I guess. And yeah, so I'm from San Francisco. If you guys don't know where San Francisco is, we just had a Super Bowl near there. And I've been there for quite a long time, started my practice in the Silicon Valley, and that's important, as you'll see. My talk is, I've broken it up into 3 parts, 3 different breaks, 3 different ways of breaking the practice, and the first is breaking traditional practice. And then I talk about a hybrid art and design practice, and then I'll talk about sustainability and beyond. So, and I'll be able to kind of look at the, kind of think about that in time segments as well. And this first section, I'm not going to talk so much specifically about each project, as I'm going to just talk about my career arc and how we got to really thinking about workplace in a very dynamic and disruptive way. This was our breakout project, and it honestly happened about over 10 years into our practice. I started as a undergrad in fine arts, a grad in landscape architecture, worked for a landscape architect for a year, and then had the opportunity to start an interiors practice. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and I jumped on it. I was in my mid-20s, and oh shoot, are they advancing on their own? Were they advancing on their own? Okay, oh well. I thought I took that off. I worked really hard to take that off of my presentation, but oh well. So maybe that's fine. as long as the timing works out. Okay, so this is Facebook's first headquarters. We started in the Silicon Valley, and that's really important because these tech firms were thinking very differently about workplace, and also they knew that workplace, the way that you worked and your environment really influenced innovation and how you innovate, and that was the only thing that mattered in the Silicon Valley at the time. And so they were very keen to collaborate with designers, and we felt like we were learning as much from them as they were from us. And in this project, we really explored this idea of leaving a space really raw, so that a client could come in and create put their own imprint on the space. And this was a pretty new concept back then. This is Uber's first headquarters in San Francisco. Another breakthrough project for us as well, for a number of different reasons. I think when we were starting out, we didn't even plan to be workplace designers. It just kind of, our first job was a workplace project, and our second job, and we were like, okay, maybe the writing's on the wall. And then we fell in love with workplace, and we realized that it was this place where people spend most of their time, and we could really impact people's lives at work. And so we jumped on this bandwagon of thinking about, in the mid-90s when we started, it was all about cubicles, and I'm really sorry about this advancing thing, because sometimes it advances and sometimes it doesn't. We had cubicle walls, we had people in the center of an office space, CEOs lining the window, and so we wanted to bring light into the space, we wanted to drop these cubicle walls, we wanted to democratize the office, revolutionize workplace. We were just all in, and that was our number one goal. The only thing, like our North Star for so many years, that we weren't even thinking about anything else until Facebook happened, and then Uber, and then we got onto this bigger stage where we had a much bigger presence and a bigger, like we were seen as these workplace experts all of a sudden, and we were starting to engage on a bigger platform. This is McDonald's headquarters, and I love this project because the team really worked hard to embody McDonald's, but not in the traditional sense, and to really expand. Like you can see the golden arches here, but it's a completely different expression of the golden arches. This is Nike's headquarters. We did Nike and Adidas. We've done a number of projects up in Oregon and Seattle. You can kind of guess at I talked concept a lot with the students today, and you can probably guess at some of the concepts here, or the kernels of a concept for some of these projects. That was a really big factor for us, and something that defined us. Something else that really defined us is that my background was not interior design, and I think because of that, I could really had this outsider perspective, a more critical eye on design. And as a small practice, we were really going head to head with some of these large firms, and having a lot of success against these firms, and really creating a workplace, really becoming known for workplace and transforming workplace, and from a historical perspective. And I always think back, and I'm like, I don't know how this all happened, but I think it really had to do with this singular focus on transforming workplace and looking at it from an outsider's perspective. This is Slack's headquarters. Very sadly, it is no longer. It was kind of this incredible multi-floor project with this idea of a journey through these floors up to this peak. The CEO of Slack was a hiker, and I was just so sad when it was gone. And that project, all the work that went into it, all the materials, all the money, all of that, and then seeing it go down in a couple of years just because kind of took me, it started me down this journey of thinking about what is it all about, and was I really revolutionizing the workplace, and was I really doing something good? And at that same time too, we did a project called Yelp, where we created a coffee shop inside, and with beer taps, and we had chefs would come in, and what do you call those, coffee specialists, coffee sommeliers that would come in, and everything was internal. And we learned that the businesses in the neighborhood businesses started to suffer because they were expecting workers to come down and buy and solicit them. And so it also got me thinking that the way we think about interior design is it's very internal, it's within the walls, and we're not thinking about the community and beyond. And I was like, we're designing for the corporate 1%. We are creating these spaces where people stay 24/7. That benefits, again, the CEOs, the owners of these companies, and we're fueling this work ethic that maybe isn't quite so great. And so that took me down a whole, almost like a massive midlife crisis. And I started to really look at and think about how can we use design for good, and is there some way to bridge that gap between these clients' kind of incessant, crazy needs that are very specific and the benefit of is questionable, to how can we do more for the immediate community, the neighborhood, and then the world at large, right? And I think this is where it's going to stop scrolling forward, hopefully. So this was one of my inflection points. I decided to go inward first, and I had, like I said, I had an undergraduate in fine arts, and sometime around that time I also decided to go back to school and get my master's in fine arts as well. And so I was constantly trying to find time to do something creative, have a creative practice, and I was constantly failing. Like it was either like my practice was either too busy, we were growing too fast, we had too many projects, or there was a recession or something, and we had to kind of button down the hatches or figure out how we would make payroll. And so it was always like feast or famine, and we were just always busy, and I just couldn't find time to have this creative practice that I was also trying to build. And I had this aha moment when, out of the blue, this graphic design firm called us and offered us this space in Charleston, South Carolina. And they said, we are offering this space to anybody who wants to create an activation for a month. And I thought, okay, this might be a great opportunity for me to take my art practice, which is a conceptual practice that I had, and align it with my design. And so I got a team of designers, and we started conceptualizing without a client. And I sadly never, after that, I never wanted a client ever again. But it was just so freeing. And so we thought about this space as, we were workplace designers. So we thought about the space as this experimental workplace. Co-working was just on the rise. WeWork was starting to become popular, so co-working was a term, and what we wanted to do was, as an experiment, almost a follow-up experiment to Facebook, where Facebook was about these people coming in and transforming their workplace. I remember at Facebook, we were just about to go into photograph. It was done, and it was finally walk in, and they had literally spray painted, like the lobby, they'd spray painted like pedestrian stripes on the concrete in the lobby, and like moved all this, and silk screened, like basically graffitied their walls and all this stuff. And we were like, should we even photograph it? And then we realized that this is exactly what we wanted them to do, right? And so this is an extension of that experiment where we provided the basic elements. So a wood block, a chair, a top, and then ways to connect those pieces. And we just dropped them in the space. And then we created a schedule. We found people that wanted to use it, and a lot of people came to us and wanted to use it. I didn't know that Charleston was such a maker space. There's so many makers in Charleston, and they came out of the woodwork. So we had a ceramicist, we had a taxidermist, we had an urban planner, we had all these incredible people coming in, and they would all do something different to the space. And we had a GoPro in the space, and we had them. We wanted to just allow them to do whatever they wanted to do in the space, and then document what they did. These are the urban planners. This is the taxidermist. And I have a short 1-minute film, if it will play. Oh, there is music, but it's not going to play. Oops. Oh, shoot. Sorry. All right, the music is not going to play. Toy maker. And none of that was us. This was all these people that were playing around with different workplace configurations. We didn't ask them to do that. So the interesting side effect to that was our designers got so much out of this hybrid project, just working kind of at the intersection of art and design in terms of this kind of creative boost that they brought to our projects in-house, our design projects in-house, that we wanted to continue, especially my partner, Primo, that Nathan just mentioned. He was really excited to continue bringing projects like this into our office, and so I was like, by all means, I'm happy to get these going and lead these and then see where they go. And our very next opportunity happened not too long after that. It was with, do you guys know Salone dei Mobili, the big furniture show in Milan? So they asked the whatever, Italian Furniture Association, I guess it would be, had a large area at the fair, and they asked 4 designers to represent the 4 quadrants of the world, so north, west, south, and east. And so they asked us as West Coast designers to represent the West. And so I went through this whole conceptual journey of thinking about Manifest Destiny, the West, cowboys, Western expansion, and it was all in context around what the future of work might be. And so then I started to think about the future of work, like way into the future, like 2200 or something like that. And this was really the first time I'd ever really thought about incorporating sustainability into a project. That naturally got me thinking about scarcity of resources for California. Scarcity of water is our big problem, or was. The problem seemed to shift. Now we seem to have more than enough water, but we still have wildfires. So I don't know, but at the time, drought was a huge issue. And so I centered this workplace idea around the scarcity of water, and also what water means to us as, back to that, as like this giver of life, kind of this idea renewal, baptism, something that gives life. And also this idea of a water cooler in an office, maybe this is a very old reference, but I don't know, do you guys know what that, like the water cooler reference is? No. Okay, that's where you would gather to like gossip around the water cooler, because that's what you had. You didn't have a fancy espresso machine to gather around in the water cooler. And we also played around with, we were super interested in different modes of work, like working kind of like this idea of the activity-based office. And it was a little bit pre-laptops being super flexible and technology being super mobile. We were thinking about, okay, you could work, of course, seated at a desk. You could work lying down. You could work, there's the lying down version. You could work standing, and you could also work walking. So we created these prosthetics that you could add to your body. You could pick them up at the start of the exhibit and then wear them and experience what it might be like to work in that posture or that mode. And so here I am in the walking mode. So that little vest has a little laptop tablet that comes down that you could, the idea is that you could work at that. And we're again looking at or gathering around, building community around this idea of scarcity of water and the water cooler or the pool. And I found this incredible artist that did a projection of this person kind of like really in a kind of a really eerie, cool way, kind of swimming in this pool. Our next creative project, we didn't have any more Italian furniture associations or cool graphic design firms from sets. Charleston asking us to do projects that we had to create our own. And at this point, I really, really wanted to explore taking our design process to underserved neighborhoods, like people that wouldn't otherwise have access to our design. Because obviously, at this point, it was very clear that the only people that could really engage us were rich corporate entities, right, for the most part, right? People that had money, corporations, companies like that. And so I was thinking, could we work with nonprofits? Could we work with local communities? Could we bring our process to other places? And rather than have them come to us, we thought we would go to them. And we ended up purchasing an ice cream truck that we converted into what we call the Food for Thought truck. And it had kind of the things that we might need to ideate, like whiteboards and pin-up space and tables and plug-in spaces, things like that, anything that we could think of. And then we started to plan a route for it. We originally had grand plans to go cross country, but this thing, the minute it got on the freeway, it rattled like crazy, and it had no heat, and it would get hot, it would get cold, it would rattle like crazy, and it had no radio. That was a definite killer. So we got as far as LA, but that was it. And I'll just go quickly, I won't talk about all these projects in too much length, but we had just so much fun going around. And again, some of the times my designers were like, there's no way, I'm not an urban planner, there's no way I can go engage with this community or do this project, but it was just a way of getting ourselves out of our comfort zone. And I think to break a practice or to break a mold or to do something different, that is what we had to do. And here we're creating some retailing prototype for San Jose. Oh, this photo I love because here we are. We're in camouflage. We're in with the other food trucks. I love that photo. And in Bakersfield, we did have the health department come up to us and ask us for our our certificate to serve food. And it was really, they did not understand what we were doing there. For Fremont, California, they really wanted another mini golf course hole. I mean, these projects ran the gamut. This is my design team trying to build a mini golf hole. I ended up having to hire a contractor to rebuild it. That's something I don't know. My designers don't have construction skills. At least that team didn't. But we had so much fun building this and then activating it and then being there while it was being used. And then we went to Bakersfield. These projects were all a success because we didn't take the high road. We didn't say, you know, we're this design firm from San Francisco and we know what we need. We actually went there and said, we want to learn from you, and we found either a nonprofit, or in this case in Bakersfield, was an architect who had come from Bakersfield, studied at Berkeley, but had purposely chosen to go back to Bakersfield because he felt that he was going to be part of that exodus of knowledge from these small towns, right? Bakersfield is very much a small town in California. He wanted to be part of the revitalization or growth or expansion of Bakersfield. And so he was very excited to host us there. And if you look at the very first picture here, we're actually creating these stencils that we then stenciled on, if you can see the foreground here. And this is my favorite project, I think, in part because we actually did create a physical space. We also did a bunch of envisioning with the community members around what a revitalized downtown might look like. There's parts of Bakersfield that were very blighted and very deserted and desolate. And so people were very excited to like put in their ideas for what they might like to see in this revitalization project. And then we hired a fabricator to help us build these planter boxes that also define space. Oh, we were talking about this today. What type of seating? We look at each other. And we also stenciled onto the wood. And this was in front of a cafe that was a creative hub for the community. So all this kind of worked out. Our very last project was in Los Angeles. This one we partnered with a nonprofit called River LA. They wanted to raise awareness around the fact that LA has a river, because a lot of people in LA don't know that. And if you ever have been to LA, you know why. It doesn't look like a river at all in most places. And so we mapped out, we found places where we would want to hang signs or where we could partner with somebody to hang a sign. Like we hung a sign at a wood manufacturer's facility. He said, oh yeah, you can hang a sign here. We found an architect whose balcony, oh wait, here. We hung a sign on, Joey Shimoda Design Group. We hung a sign on their balcony. And so on every site, we would, in advance, we would have to figure out how far away it was from the river and then create the sign and then hang it there. And in some cases, we had like window stickers as well. Like we just blanketed, as much as we could, blanketed LA with this signage and then had a big party afterwards. And again, this stepping out of our comfort zone was just something that was very unexpected, but I think the firm overall gained so much depth of experience that they then brought back to their projects, to our projects. And so I feel like our projects got more creative, we could take more risks, we could take more chances, and we could really expand this dialogue with what we felt like. It empowered us as designers to see ourselves as not able to solve any design problem, not just an interior design problem, but to be out in the world and to solve a design problem out in the world. Part of this project was a book. Before we started the project, we engaged with a publisher in the UK, and they agreed to publish this project, so we had a writer on staff who documented the project. So this project is our journey and our design process through the journey through all the stops of the truck, but also a journey through the design process. And the book, I've left a couple of books with you guys. I know there's going to be one in the office. It is truly an art piece in and of itself, so take a look if you get a chance. Okay, this is part 3. Right on time. So that was a kind of a massive undertaking for our firm. And even Prima said, okay, we're going to have to take a little break from these creative projects. And so I was at home, inside, on a summer's day, because we couldn't go outside and breathe the air because of wildfires. This was the second year in a row where and I'm sure you guys saw images of the really red sun, and it just felt like the end of days. It was just kind of a really bizarre time. And I was sitting there looking down at this stack of magazines, and this cover from the New Yorker was staring at me, and I noticed the date. The date was a year ago. So the exact same thing was happening a year later. And so it just got me thinking about climate change. I'm like, okay, there's a pattern here, and it's starting to repeat itself, and it feels like it's getting worse, and who knows where we're going. So we finished publishing the book, in the summer, and it came out in the fall, and I was thinking about climate change really for the first time, and sustainability really for the first time. I mean, it's a little embarrassing in a way, but it just really hadn't been an issue in our sphere of our work until this moment. But as soon as I kind of got my teeth into it, I could not get off that track. And so that same fall, in the fall of 2019, I was asked by the guy to the left of me. His name is Avi Rajagopal. He is the editor-in-chief of Metropolis magazine. He does a lot of events and partners with a lot of design firms, and he had done this before, and he came to me and said, hey, I'd love to do a think tank at your office, and what would you like to talk about? And I told him, I'm going down this crazy track. I really want to think about how a designer could be an activist, or could use their design to address a larger issue or a larger agenda. And he was like, great, I'm thinking along those exact same lines, let's do it. And so we had a panel talk. The guy on the right is this really interesting architect named Daniel Burnham, and they do this, they call it proxy, and they activate a lot in San Francisco and do films there. I think it's just as important to be an activist in terms of creating community and building space as it is to be an activist for other reasons. And so that took me down my rabbit hole of looking at what firms were doing along the lines of climate change and sustainability, what associations were doing. The AIA, just that same year, put out a call to architects saying that climate change is the most urgent issue that needs to be addressed for architects. And it was a big long statement talking about climate change and the issues around climate change. And then I looked at IAID, and you guys all know IAID and IAID. Nothing, absolutely no mention of sustainability or climate change anywhere on their websites. And so it prompted me to write this article in January, in January, so of the next year. This is like right before the pandemic hits, that we need to make some climate commitments. And it was kind of funny and interesting that Avi Rajagopal from Metropolis we were kind of tracking along the same track. That same year, he was also working with another architecture firm in Seattle to look at the impact that interior design has on carbon emissions, and realizing that the impact of the interiors of a project can be as large, if not greater than the impact of all this like really substantial stuff that the building is built of, if you consider all the renovations that happen in the lifespan of a building. And if you haven't seen that report, look it up. You can either Google it through Metropolis, or you can look up LMN Architects. They have a bunch of really amazing white papers. And so the building industry is responsible for almost 40% of carbon emissions, so it's very important. And as transportation, well, if transportation becomes more sustainable and our industry becomes more sustainable, I guess that's questionable at this moment, that means that buildings, if we don't start making our buildings more efficient and utilizing materials that are more efficient, then that is going to become an even bigger piece of the pie. We are still building, I don't know, let's see, like a Manhattan, like every month, the amount of buildings that are in Manhattan are built around the world. And so until 2050, we are building a lot around the world. And so the concrete, and the energy that is used to build these buildings, we need to like address that process, and we have limited resources, and I think people are really coming to their senses about that. So while Avi was doing his climate toolkit, which is a great resource, if you guys haven't looked at it, go to Metropolis, type in climate toolkit. I actually worked on creating a PDF version of that aligns with the design process. So there's two versions, so you can look for either one. And while he was doing that with Metropolis, I was at O+A doing an eco playbook. And this was our attempt as a firm to address our design process. And we ended up calling this eco playbook O+A's guide to design with our future in mind. And we had several chapters. We wanted to think about how you talk to your client about design, how you procure, how you select materials, how you might design so that you can consider the size, the way material comes, and actually address that in terms of either designing for construction or designing utilizing standard sizes and things like that. We have a chapter on social equity and biophilia, and finally a pretty robust chapter. I had a super geeky designer who was really into the design process, and so she created this whole map of the design process. And so this is still on our website, and it's still downloadable. And I'm not going to get into the pages of this, but this was kind of a yes, no, if this, not that kind of a thing. We played around with that. One thing that O+A is known for is, for whatever reason, our brand team. We have an incredible brand team, and we don't do anything half-assed. So we had to put all of our heads together to design this and to create an incredible book that not only had as much knowledge and information that we can impart into it, but that also looked amazing. Design for recovery, design to reduce the amount of materials you need in a space. I feel like some of this is already in a way dated, but we had every intention to make it this working document, but you know how that goes. Design for redesign. This is one of our social equity pages, design for connectivity and inclusive design. And then this is one of our pages out of the biophilia section. We did this during the pandemic. In part, as you know, it was a pretty challenging time. We brought about 40 designers through the pandemic, and we had to find work for them to do. So this was one of those projects. And sometimes around that time, I started to pull back. I was really wanting, I guess I got a taste of this hybrid work and kind of art and design collaborative projects, and I wanted more of that, and we didn't have any opportunities, definitely didn't have any opportunities for that during the pandemic or any time after the pandemic, and I'm hoping that things settle down at some point soon and that we will be able to do that again. But in the meantime, Metropolis came and asked me if I'd be interested in becoming an editor at large with them to help them run some of their sustainability efforts. And I said, yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. And it's been really cool to see that whole side of it, the research, the journalistic angle, and also sustainability is so important to Metropolis, and it's been just kind of a real pleasure for me to exercise that side of my brain. I've written a couple of articles for them. Like I said, I've always been really interested in the future of design and kind of being seen as experts in that area. I've always been asked to talk about what's next for design, for workplace. And with the pandemic, as you probably know, maybe not, that became the big question: how do we get workers back to the office? And I kept thinking to myself, we're asking the wrong question. Like, it's not about getting workers back to the office. It's about why do they want to even go back to the office? And it has nothing, to me, it had nothing to do with design in a sense. And I think it had everything to do with, like, what is their agency? What is their, how can they exercise their autonomy in a workplace? And so I wrote an article about employee-owned offices. So a different model for kind of, again, being kind of a revolutionary in a way, like exploring the hierarchy of not just the workplace, but of the corporate office itself. So that article lives in Metropolis. You can Google my name and find the articles that I've written. When is this? This was probably 2023. I started this project with a partner, a woman named Maya Bird Murphy. She runs actually I donated my food truck to her organization. She has a mobile, oh my God, what's it called? It's a mobile makers. It's a nonprofit that caters to young high school students, and they bring their mobile maker trucks to high schools, and especially in underserved neighborhoods. And we donated. Our truck is in Boston, and they have a truck in Chicago. And she came to me and wanted to explore this idea of alternative practice. So again, kind of thinking about corporate work and corporate interior practices, these big firms like Perkins and Will and Gensler and all of that, and like that being like, why is that our best track? And are there other options? And are there better alternatives for some people? And so we explored what we called alternative practice. And these alternative practice models were mostly small practice, a lot of community-focused practice, a lot of women-owned practices, some research-based practices where some of the people in the practice were also faculty at some school or another, but they were all exploring really interesting and important work. And I ended up working with her for about a year, starting the project. She has since gotten an additional grant for it, and the website is about to launch. So if you are interested in this at all, as a just thinking about alternative paths as you graduate from school, you should look at this website. I mean, at least get inspired by some of these young people in these organizations, because they're doing some really incredible work all across the United States. So those are some of the articles I wrote. The other stuff that I do with Metropolis is I run workshops, I run summits with sustainability leaders. I just did a virtual one in January, and one in person before that in Los Angeles at Greenbuild. And it's just really exciting to have a pulse on what these people that are all way smarter than me around sustainability are thinking and where they're going with their practices. And especially, just as kind of trash talking large practices, one amazing thing about large practices is they do have a lot of resources. And some of them are putting a lot of their resources into research and building out some of these tools that would really help all practices. I think there is, to me, one of the things that I'm sensing a change in our field is this sense of camaraderie around breaking the practice, around breaking or changing the way we design. And a big firm like Gensler or Perkins Will might create something or do some research, but they are happy to share it with everyone else so that we can all level up. I think that's really exciting. And so over my holiday break was not a break because I was putting together one element of this report that you guys all need to go read. Just Google Metropolis Sustainable Design Report, and you can download it. It's got multiple sections. It's got a great section on 8 key takeaways, and a really incredible section on three materials. So if you have any interest in biomaterials or new materials or innovative materials, there's all kinds of great content in here. And my section, since I do talk with a lot of sustainability leaders, my section was interviewing sustainability leaders and then getting their take on what are the issues, what's stalling out, what's working, what's not working, and what must change, what comes next. And so I interviewed a number of people and then put this report together, and then my collaborator, Francisco, interviewed a number of people as well. And it was quite a bit of work to gather all of these interviews, but this report is really amazing. So check it out. And then the last big project that I do with Metropolis, and if any of you come to MediaCon, please come find me on the 11th floor at our sustainability lab. I've been doing this now for 4 years, and every year it gets bigger and better. And we have manufacturers that we've vetted that have sustainable products, and then we do a bunch of programming around sustainability, and we have a really big summit in person there at MediaCon. And so we activate things in a lot of different ways. And so that's the work that I do with Metropolis, and it's part-time, but I just totally love kind of the back and forth between my practice and then doing this more kind of journalistic, investigative, research-based work. And then I have 2 more slides. I'm going to end with something that I do consider activism. I started a group within IAID, Northern California, in part to kind of push IAID national to create some sort of statement on climate change. And they finally did this last year, but they kind of buried it, but you can find it. It took me 4 years to get them to do it. But we started this Climate Action Committee. And a byproduct of this committee was something that we call the crawl, climate crawl. And so we every couple of months, we'll schedule a crawl at a firm, HOK, Huntsman, IA, Revel. They'll host, and they'll share something about their journey along sustainability, like Revel talked about how you decipher an EPD label. HOK is really big into biophilia, so they talked about what they're doing in biophilia. And so it's another way for firms to take down that competitive veil and share resources so that we can all level up and get on, like speed towards sustainable solutions and changing our design processes. And I think that's what we're all trying to do now. And we all realize that we need to help each other get there. And then this last slide that I'm going to end on is actually a pledge that I created in 2020. It was along the time of the George Floyd murder, and a lot of people were creating responses, and we decided to create a pledge. I'm conflicted about pledges because I think it's an easy out, and unless you put, like, what is it, money behind the pedal, I don't know, that's not the right saying, but unless you put something behind it, I feel like it can be empty words. But and I was going to take this slide out, but then I was thinking about my subtitle for my talk, Why Design Needs Disruptors Now, and I just felt like this paragraph that I wrote in 2020, it's so weirdly prescient for this moment in time, and it almost sums up everything that is why we need to get up and disrupt now as designers. And it says here that we understand the recent turmoil in today's world is only a taste of what's to come. I mean, I wrote that 2020, it's kind of creepy to think of where we are right now, and that no industry can continue business as usual. And I think that that's something that we really all have to grapple with, and especially as we're learning to design and going out into the world to become designers, we just can't practice the way that we've been practicing. Our moral obligation to future generations is to see that the design industry fundamentally changes, and I like to see challenges as opportunities, and that working hard is how you get your reward, and we do regard this obligation as a gift of purpose and our chance to be part of an adventure. So, I put this idea of disrupting as a challenge to all of us. I think we can't just design beautiful interior spaces. We have to go beyond that. All right, thank you. All right, I hope that was it a little bit janky? Maybe I should have said something. I feel like it sounds better back here and not as good up here, but maybe it's just because I don't have it up to my mouth. Okay, any questions?
Thank you for that great talk and all the things that you're doing within your firm to kind of promote what the next level of design needs to do, the importance of design. Well, I'm wondering, I guess for we have a lot of students in the audience, and how would you suggest advise them in becoming agents of change there's so many things happening. I mean, it's like AI, it's the climate change, it's sustainability, and what your responsibilities with materials that you're choosing. And where would you say they should put their energy? What should they focus on the most at this point?
Yeah, totally. Okay.
I taught a materials class at CCA, College of the Arts, for 2 years, and when I was teaching, I realized that it's not about teaching them things that they need to memorize, like concrete is bad, or concrete is this number of embodied carbon, and carpet is this number. It's really about becoming a good detective, like really being able to research and find the truth, and find what's real. And I think that is so important in this day and age to investigate and go beyond the surface. So I'd say that's number one, like become a good sleuth. And number two, follow your passion. I think there's so many ways to access or to make an impact. One thing, you talked about my podcast, I actually ended it this December with John. I know. We had a really great run, and if you haven't listened to, you can scroll through and find episodes that you might want to hear, and it kind of changes from being very interview-based in the first 3 or 4 seasons to 2 seasons ago, we called it something like the accidental activist. If all of a sudden you work at a chemical plant and there's a fire and now it's raining toxic chemicals and not cleaning it up and your son is ill, all of a sudden you are now protesting the place that you work, right? You become an accidental activist. And so we interviewed this guy who became a mama bird to these weird, what's the name of the bird? I can't remember now. This really ugly bird that flies through the Swiss Alps. And because of climate change, like their route would change, and so they needed guidance to get across, otherwise they wouldn't make it across. So this guy would basically have these birds imprint on him, and then he would fly across the Alps. So we had this crazy season. And the last season, my partner asked me what I wanted to talk about, and I was starting to question climate change and from a bigger, broader perspective, and realizing that it's, you know, what is the source of climate change? Why do we have climate change? And I really came to the conclusion that it's inequity, it's these structures and systems that we have in place that we really need to challenge, and that brought me to women in design. And I did notice that most of our classes here were women, and which I think is great, and I was happy to see, and now I see a number of men in the audience, which is great as well. But one statistic that I'll leave you with is that 80% of interior designers are women starting school. It's way more, 50-50 in architecture, it's 50-50 in college, and then it drops down to 25% of licensed, and then it drops down even more less women in leadership roles. And it's not as stark in interior design, it drops down to about 30 or 40% in leadership roles, but if you've got 80% of women being designers in interior firms, why isn't that number at least 50%? So, you know, just a question. And so that took me down this rabbit hole of women and kind of thinking about inequity, and we brought it full circle to women in climate change and women in design. And it's a really interesting series, really challenged me, realized how little I know about all of those topics, but it was something that interested, it was something that I was drawn to. So I think the way to disrupt, the way to think about what is my impact going to be, is through what you're passionate about. And do the research, do the homework. It's going to take you down some rabbit holes, and follow those, and really think about, what is the bigger issue? Why is this affecting that? And become good detectives, and then follow what you're passionate about. Because all of these issues feed into the bigger issue, which, you know, I think that there's a number of crises happening in the world. Climate change is just one of them, but they're all interrelated. Do you want to turn the microphone?
Out of all of your projects, what would you say is your favorite, and maybe also the most impactful?
You know, one project that I didn't share, we did a project for Microsoft. I'm going to probably talk about a workplace project first. That one was impactful in a way because we had to change their corporate culture, and that was a very heavy, huge lift. They were all accustomed. They were all engineers, very spoiled engineers, accustomed to a private office. And as you went up the rank, you got a better private office or whatever, with a window or a view, or I don't know what. And so we had to get them all into open office space. And we had to work with Microsoft to get them into that mindset. And that was, I don't know, it was we had such great collaborators at Microsoft, and I think it was just such a fascinating process, and there was impact there. But again, I feel like now I want my impact to go beyond. And we have done some pro bono work for some nonprofits, and I feel like that goes far in us utilizing our skills and bringing it to other communities and people that could use the services that we offer. But I guess the food for thought truck, because it was the closest that I got to really working with those underserved communities that we wanted to work with, and I love that it's a book and it's documented, and yeah, it'll live forever. on our shelf, let's say.
You mentioned the importance of breaking out of your comfort zone and just to expand the way that you think and the way that you practice. I'm curious, do you have any specific practices that you've developed in your personal life, your work life, to intentionally break out of your comfort zone? Anything that you would recommend that other people give a try if they're trying to whet their appetite for what that can do for them?
Yeah, and from a creative perspective, I think finding some balance between something that has some structure and then something that's really freeform. And so what I try to do is do a creative act every day. So that's the structure, right? Every single day I have to do a creative act. What I'm trying to work on is doing it first thing in the morning versus at the end of the day. And then that creative act, that's where the free form comes in, and sometimes I'll look up like weird things to do, like draw something with your left hand, or pick an object in your house and like create an assemblage with 3 items in your house, or like there's exercises that you can find online, or you can just come up with things, but it makes you think outside the box, and it kind of gives you like this outlet to like play, but in a structured way. So I would say exercise your creative brain once a day and do something silly that is just for you, but within that structure. That's what I mean, a lot of you have sketchbooks, draw something every day in your sketchbook. I think having that rigor to your practice, but then within that rigor, play.
Well, thank you, Verda. Fantastic.